Hello everyone, I'm Becky Goldsmith with Piece of Cake, and I just realized that even though I have many videos up on YouTube and on my website about wool applique, I don't have one that shows the very simple whip stitch for holding down the edge. So I want to share that with you now. What you see in front of me is one block with one tree from my book, Birds in Toyland. I've already cut and fused the shape to my background block, and I used soft fuse to do that. The needle I'm going to use is the Bowen No. 9 Crewel needle. It's an embroidery needle that I use for lots and lots of different things. There are a variety of threads that I could choose. I could choose a pearl cotton. This is a number 12 Presencia. If I wanted my stitch to show more, I could use a number 8 pearl cotton. And I'm choosing colors that match the wool, but you can always go out there and choose colors that contrast with your wool. So I could use this pearl cotton, I could use an Aurifil pearl cotton or a Wonderful Fill pearl cotton. I'm going to use Wonderfil's Ilana wool thread. That's the one I'm going to use. But I could also choose a variegated hand-dyed wool. This one is from Tracy Trevathan. Or I could use a flower thread. Now, a flower thread is a pearl cotton that hasn't been mercerized, so it's not shiny. If I wasn't using wool, I would probably move to this as my next choice, but I am going to use wool. Now, why am I using wool? I'm using wool because it's fuzzy and will blend in, because the wool is fuzzy. I'm taking the eye end of the needle, I'm going to bend the thread over it and pull that taut and through and see if I can feed that through the eye. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to use a needle threader, but that works often enough that it's almost always the first thing I try. I'm going to start sewing about there. I want to turn my applique over. I do not want the tail of thread to wander off and be visible out there in the background. I'm going to begin by putting my needle into the fabric, running it underneath the wool to about there. So there's the edge of my wool. I'm going to bury the tail, and then I'm going to make what is most often an ending knot, except I'm doing it as the beginning. I'm going to catch a little of the background fabric, pull that through, make a loop, go bottom to top through the loop, and that knot will secure the thread, and there is not a tail of thread to show. Before you turn it over, it's smart to put your needle in at the outside. Don't pull it through, just poke it in so that when you turn this over, you know where your knot is. I'm going to move my needle and bring it into the applique. It's not quite an 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to carefully pull that through, and then I'm going to hold my needle as I would if I was doing a regular applique stitch, and I'm going to go straight down into the background fabric next to the edge of the applique. I'm touching the middle finger of my underneath hand. I'm going to move the needle with my top hand. It's moving underneath the background fabric, and I want to come over. See how I'm testing where the needle's coming up? I'm moving over. It's closer than an 1/8 of an inch from my last stitch, and I'm catching the edge of the wool. Now, the reason you have to catch so much of the wool is because there's no turn under allowance here. That's raw wool. It's felted, but if you stitch too close to the edge, the weave can let go. When you pull your thread, you can control how tight you pull it. If you pull it too tight, let me pull it too tight, it'll suck in. You don't necessarily want that to pull in quite so much, but you also don't want to leave the stitches loose. And I'm guessing you can see just how invisible these stitches are, because the wool is fuzzy, the thread is fuzzy, the color matches reasonably well. It's a nice look. And that is a whip stitch. It's a nice, quiet way to hold the edges of your wool to your block. And you can go forward and do embroidery around these edges or more embellishment if you want to, but you don't have to, because this stitching, along with the fusible web below, will hold this applique to your block. Now let me rethread with a pearl cotton so you can get an idea what it might look like if you used a slightly showier thread. I've threaded my needle with this 12 weight pearl cotton from Presencia, which is a beautiful pearl cotton. I like it a lot. It's not quite as shiny as some other pearl cottons, and I am not going to knot this because eventually I will take these stitches out, but I will bury the tail of thread, and I want to mark where that is and bring my needle up in about the same kind of place. The thread color is a little lighter. The thread itself is tighter. It's not fuzzy. Where wool is a fuzzy thread, this pearl cotton is smoother. And even though it is a 12 weight and not particularly heavy when compared to an 8 weight, it shows. And sometimes you might want that to show. You might want that as an added embellishment. You might want that to show and be a different color. You might want that to show and it be a metallic thread to look fancy at the edge of your applique. Who knows? But this whip stitch remains the same. If you have watched any of my invisible hand applique videos, you'll know this is the exact same stitch catching more of the applique. Let me turn this over so you can see the back, and you'll see these angled stitches that begin at the edge of the applique and come in to the body of the applique just a little bit. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how to do this simple whip stitch to hold down the edges of your wool applique. I do have other videos on wool applique, specifically on the buttonhole stitch, that you can find on YouTube. And I should also add that my class on Creative Spark on Birds in Toyland has extensive information on both wool and needle turn hand applique. I again hope you've enjoyed this. May you have many happy stitches. Thanks for watching.